Not quite done.
You got 2 minutes yet. Use 5 bells if you like, gents.
Run again, we're not guaranteed these ones, right? So.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to our organizational meeting for the City of Lacombe Council for Monday, October 26th. We'll call the organizational meeting to order. You've got an agenda before you. Anything else for consideration for the organizational meeting? If not, Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move the agenda as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor? Unanimously approved. First up, item 3.1, the deputy mayor roster. Any changes or adjustments there? Councillor Connick?
Well, I was just going to, Councillor Lucas, I was just going to make a motion, council approves the first deputy mayor.
Wonderful. Appreciate that. Councillor Hoekstra.
Just a comment, why is Councillor Hibbs before Councillor Gullickson?
Just strictly based on importance.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't answer that. I don't know what it is.
I think it was just, these just got swapped for some reason, but it doesn't really matter because I noticed that too, but I thought whatever.
I think it matters.
Say it again.
So
Alphabetically.
if you look at the whole, Talia comes up before Councillor Gullickson. She has it twice before he has it once.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah. Because originally I should have been the September, October rotation, like once upon a time.
They were moved, I think things were adjusted, were they not?
Well, just you and I have been swapped around.
Yeah, but previously.
Well, whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
again,
it doesn't matter. I don't
it
know.
really doesn't matter because it still works out the same.
I know,
Yeah.
but it's
Do
still.
do either of you want to make any adjustments to that?
Well, it would be Gullickson that would
Why
have a
don't
problem
we
with it,
would
and if
just
he
make
doesn't,
adjustments if we have to?
This is the time to do it.
Yeah, but I don't know that yet. If something comes up and we can trade between ourselves, right?
This is for the appointment, though. Those kind of adjustments can go on anytime. Absolutely.
Exactly. I don't care.
Very good. Councillor Hoekstra?
I just maintain, thank you, Mayor Creasy. I maintain that it should look equitable, right? So Councillor Gullickson should come up in July and then Councillor Hibbs should come up in September.
Point taken.
In order to be.
Given that those two do not seem to have a problem with it, Councillor Jacobson.
I'm just curious if there's an obvious reason, I'm stupid here, but why is Councillor Hibbs on twice and Councillor Ross on ballot?
Those adjustments were made previously. We'd have to look back through the minutes. So, seeing that neither of those two concerns seem to burn up, I think we're going to leave it as is.
No, yeah, it doesn't matter, Chair.
And we have a motion before us from Councillor Connick. All those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. So noted, Councillor Huckabee. The next item for the 2020 remainder and 2021 council meeting dates are before you. Chief Administrator Gowdy, if you care to.
So one thing that is worth noting here, I would say, is that the schedule of meetings that has been proposed presumes that you will accept the recommendations that we've put forward under our committee review, in that council committee meetings will be scheduled for specific topics, not as a standing item. So if you would like to continue them as a standing item on the first Monday of every month, then we can make that adjustment here.
Appreciate that. So then are we to assume that the two that are scheduled for committee of the whole on June and August already have subjects of
Yes.
importance?
So one is a strategic plan update, the June. The August is the pre-budget direction meeting that you have previously had. Or requested.
Yes, thank you. Anyone care to make a motion in that regard?
I'll make the motion.
Councillor Hibbs,
That council approve regular council meeting dates from November 2020 to October 2021 as presented.
thank you. So I think that anybody watching in the public will see a substantial difference in those adjustments made for the committee of the whole minutes. That does not suggest that those will not occur. However, they will be scheduled on an as-needed basis, completely within the requirements of the MGA. And Legislator Pettibone, I was just curious, can you give us an idea what the notification timing requirements are for a committee of the whole meeting for council?
I believe that's 24 hours, Mayor Creasy.
Okay, very good. In any event, those meetings are recorded and played on the YouTube channel as well, correct?
Yes, they are, and I would go a step further. Although the MGA permits 24-hour notice, that has never occurred. That's never occurred in recent history here that I'm aware of. And we would certainly strive to give more like 2 weeks notice. We could advertise in the paper and that sort of thing.
That is just the minimum.
That's the occasion minimum in the MGA.
And I, not only would members of the public appreciate a little more notice wherever possible, I expect the council would as well. So do we have a mover on the meeting dates?
Yeah.
Councillor Hibbs?
Yeah.
Very good. Any additional input? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. And our appointments for committees, boards, and commissions. We've underwent some review of some of these. Have Chief Gowdy elaborate on some additional ones.
I don't actually believe that there are any changes to highlight. We just continue the existing appointments, which has been the practice here at the city and town of Macomb. And so there is, the recommendations are to reappoint the existing members on those, the remainder of the term on those committees.
Thank you. I have not heard from any council members that were seeking changes to the appointments. However, if in fact there are any, we would certainly I could certainly entertain those now.
Can I get off the CTR meeting?
Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I'm not seeking to change anything this time around, but I would like to recommend in the future that it was a two-year appointment rather than a 4-year, just because there is a whole element of committees that I never had any type of committees. Like I had a lot of committees, but they were of a certain type. They were not more, I don't know. I don't want to get into it, but the point is I wouldn't mind if there was a shakeup after year 2.
Okay. Good. Councillor Conick.
I can make a motion if that's what you're ready for. The council approved the 2021 council appointments to council committees, boards and commissions as planned.
Thank you, Councillor Conick. Any additional input? All those in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. And I see that there was an option of some related motions. Are there any of those that was just for our reference, I believe? For the appointments that have been ceased, those were at previous meetings, so they're there for your reference as well. Everybody's got those underneath the purpose in the grayed out portion of your agenda package. Okay. If there's nothing else regarding to that subject, we will move to the citizen at large appointment. Item 3.4, Chief Gowdy.
There, we've got one appointment to recommend, and that is to a vacancy on the Macomb Police Commission. There, I understood you had a number of applications to review, and I'm recommending the approval of Cameron Penstone to the Macomb Police Commission with a term ending December 31st, 2023.
I think I did. There was, we were fortunate to have a few individuals up for consideration for this position, and they were vetted by the commission with input from, I'm expecting from the chief and all members of the commission. This is the ones that were brought forward as possibilities, and this was the choice. So, Councillor Conick, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just that we had, I think it's the first year that I've been on the police commission, we had like 4 or 5 applications, and there were actually 3 really excellent ones. And in fact, we sent 2 to the mayor because we left it up to him to decide, actually, because there was 2 really good, strong candidates, and I'm pleased with the mayor's selection. Cameron's a younger fellow. I think I'm the youngest guy in the police commission, in fact, right now at 51. And so it's nice to sit someone on there who's young, is an up-and-coming businessman of the community, and born and raised here. So I think it's a great selection.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that that's worthwhile for the community to understand that we were fortunate to have several qualified members to choose from, which is great to see on any of the positions that we offer for the community input. And I think that he will bring a unique point of view to the commission and look forward to his work there. If in fact it's ratified by council. Councillor Jacobson.
Are there 2 vacancies?
Not currently, but there's another one upcoming, I believe.
I can comment to Mayor Creasy. There's one vacancy starting January 1st due to an expiring member. So that is the one we are filling tonight.
Your sound kind of broke up there a bit.
Sorry.
Right.
I'll try that again. There's one vacancy coming January 1st that we are filling tonight for Cameron Penstone. And in addition to that, there will be some more appointments and reappointments coming to council this year for the remainder of, and on the specifically on the police commission, there is a reappointment as well recommended. So that will be coming forward later.
The information you're after, Councillor Jacobson?
I guess. It just looked to me that there was 2 expiring December 31st, 2020, but that's fine.
Correct. There's one remaining year left in the possible length of term for the other member. So we were going to reappoint for 1 more year for that member.
That was a reasonable expectation for reappointment, I guess is what that boils down to. Councillor Conick?
Yeah, and further that particular member, she didn't start at the beginning of a term, she kind of got in halfway. So that she's hoping that she can get this reappointed for the full 6 years. And I'm prepared to make the motion, by the way, if I may, that council approve
Sure.
the appointment, Cameron Penstone to the Macomb Police Commission terminating 7/1/2020.
Thank you. Any additional input? Very good. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Thank you. And an item of utmost importance, top of mind for everyone, council seating arrangements, something that I'm obligated to do. Is there anything to discuss here? Do we actually need a motion with this? Is this part of our bylaws? Is that why this one comes up each year? I expected so. Could I have a motion, someone, please? Councillor Hibbs?
I'll move that council seating arrangements remain as they are until the next organizational meeting. Well, post-election, I guess.
We'll move for stationary.
Yeah.
Very good. I just get a chuckle out of this. I have to do this every year, but anyway, great to see that that meets everybody's expectations. Not up to many neighbors. All those in favor? Any opposed? Very good. And if I'm not mistaken, the only item left is an in-camera item. For item 3.4, is there anything additional?
That is just the resume for those that want to peruse that for the police commission appointment.
Thank you. I still wanted to at least cover that because it is listed on the agenda and people would think it was odd if we didn't at least bring it up. I'm assuming after the previous motions that no one sees fit to entertain moving in camera. Is this correct? Very good. I believe then that concludes our business for the organizational meeting for today. Councillor Hoekstra?
I move to adjourn the
Thank you.
organizational meeting on October, whatever, 26th is.
Very good, thank you. Let the record reflect that motion to adjourn was made at 5:15. All those, is there anything additional? All those in favor? Very good. Thank you. Some of our meetings don't quite go that quickly, do they? So, nice even quarter hour meeting. We can move in at 5:15 for our regular council meeting. Once again, for the record, on Monday, October 26th at 5:15. And I will call the meeting to order. Everybody's seen the agenda. Any adjustments to that? Councillor Gullickson?
I'll move the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Seeing no other input, all those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. So this evening, we have no presentations or public hearings, so we'll move right into section 5, request for decision. Chief Gowdy, can you take us through the strategic plan updates for the 2020 to 2022 version?
So we have been working on this for some time, and I believe that the plan in front of you reflects the full spectrum of input that we received previously. It is ready for adoption. Just to highlight the changes since the last time you saw this, completed items have been consolidated into a new section, section 3.2 of the strategic plan. We've added one additional measure under the delivery and management of services. That's the identification and adoption of an online land use permitting system. And review safe speed limits in the community. We added and traffic calming measures to the list of things. So speed limits, traffic controls, and traffic calming measures to promote efficient movement of traffic without compromising community safety. And those are the changes that were directed by council at the last review. So we're proposing it for adoption.
Appreciate that, Chief Gotti. So the item there that you mentioned for the proposed online permitting,
Yes.
how do I put it bluntly? That is a common area of concern amongst those who choose to develop in our community and others. And that some would suggest that somehow we fall short in that area. And I have determined from any of the conversations that I have had with those developers that is merely a miscommunication of the requirements that we are obligated to operate by according to the Municipal Government Act. And there are timeframes which are not at our discretion. They are specifically outlined. So I just wanted to have that on the record so that people understood the reasons why permits take the time that they do. It's for a variety of reasons, but we are obligated by law to operate within those parameters with the MGA. And I think that accounts for an overwhelming majority of the timing. Is that a fair statement?
There is legislated requirements for advertising 2 weeks continuously, and then there's legislated appeal periods included in the MGA. And both of those items create, I don't want to use the term bottlenecks, but they create timeline issues that are frustrating for developers. However, I always say this, that one person's red tape is another person's due process. And so you have to balance out the need for streamlined application processes and expedited processing with the need for transparency and an opportunity for the public to provide feedback and input. And I think that's largely, as you pointed out, legislated in the Municipal Government Act.
Well, and I happen to think that the team that we have at Planning and Development do an outstanding job of being extremely accommodating with all of their customers, some of which are full-time developers, many of whom are not. They are all treated in a timely manner and very professionally, and I certainly appreciate it because I think it shows that even in these challenging economic times, Lacombe has had I'm going to say an enviable amount of development permits pulled here in comparison to other area communities.
Appreciate you saying it so on behalf of staff.
Thank you. Is council hoping for some additional time to review this document, or do you have anyone wishing to make a motion? Councillor Jacobson?
Yeah, I'm prepared to make a motion that council adopt the 2020-2022 strategic plan as presented.
Thank you. Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I missed when I was out driving the school bus, Department 38, and Department 38 talks about the speed limit review and how I know it's part of our strategic plan and we budgeted to do that. The more I think about it, the more I'm not in favor of spending that money, but I guess we can, I'll vote in favor of the motion, but when it comes down to it at the end of the day, when we come back to budget, I'll talk about it further.
I mean, certainly we do come up with a strategic plan to guide council's input from as a whole for the operations and management of the city. That's not to say that just because it appears in the strategic plan, as you mentioned, that is an automatic given. We still have opportunity to make adjustments at budget time, like you suggested. So that certainly does not remove that opportunity just because this particular plan is passed. Excuse me. COVID on us. Grief. Any other strategic plan items? And who made the motion? Thank you. Councillor Jacobson. I'll call the vote then. All those in favor? That is unanimously adopted. Thank you. The next item up under request for decision, item 5.2, our shared services agreement with our community partners of Lacombe County for our intermunicipal collaborative framework.
So specifically, this is related to the sharing of operational costs related to the shared facilities that we use to provide services to residents in both Lacombe County and the city of Lacombe. Portion of the memo before you, I plagiarized from County Commissioner Tim Timmons, and so I've actually cleared that with him ahead of time, so he's well aware. But just so that you're aware, the county did review this same information on Thursday, largely the same information, tailored for them, of course, and unanimously endorsed the execution of this agreement, the operational cost sharing agreement. Covers the facilities listed within the memo. I think that the important thing here is that this is a change from past practice in which individual counts were taken and there was an attempt to quantify the sort of logical contributions from Lacombe County to the city of Lacombe for the value of the services provided. But it is very difficult to actually come up with reliable data. And so over the years, I would say there was significant shifts from year to year in the support that was offered for a given service. That made it difficult for both Lacombe County and the city to budget on an annual basis, and there was fluctuations in the hundreds of thousands sometimes. Going forward, this agreement proposes to set the payment as based on an average of the past 4 years of transfers, and index it for inflation, index it for a changing population ratio. So as the city's growth outpaces the county, there will be a gradual shifting of costs back to the city because presumably more residents are making use of those services. And then there is also an indexing for the overall deficit incurred by the facilities. So if there is operational cost savings or increased expenses due to new regulations or something, then those are shared. However, those last two corrections are done every 5 years, where the inflation correction is done every year. I believe that this is administratively much simpler to administrate and acknowledges the rather arbitrary methodology that actually came to this, in many cases, came to these numbers anyway. So it does provide some stability for both municipalities and ensures that there's no differentiation applied in services provided to county residents or city residents. So we are recommending the endorsement. Your representatives on this committee are Mayor Creasy and Councillor Hibbs, and I would say the three of us are well suited to answer any questions there may be.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So in the past, I think I've been made aware, I was previously prior to council on the rec and culture. There were significant improvements in tracking as to, and that's what kind of justified for the increases in funding. So is that continued tracking not going to take place? Like, for example, there was issues within the library, for funding and different areas. So are you just going to stick with the mean average for obviously easier to administrate? So
I would say that the term improved tracking is subject to some interpretation. There was changed methodology in tracking that resulted in higher payments to the city But when you delve into the accuracy of those numbers, it kind of disappeared. It's very, very difficult to actually demonstrate the number of residents that are coming from the county versus the city, because often it relies on self-disclosure. And so when someone comes and is asked at a city facility, are you a city resident or are you a county resident? There would be a tendency to think, well, I may be getting charged a differential rate, or there may be some different services offered to me or something. And so most people will default to say that city residents. And so it was very difficult to actually rely on some of the numbers. For example, use of the LMC, I think the county was paying 6% of the overall cost. And so that when you look at that and say, well, the numbers came from somewhere, sure they did, but are they reliable? And is the system set up in a way that's creating an incentive for people to make it appear a certain way? And I would say it was.
So regardless of some of the variances there, I think that both parties that were well represented have come up with pretty clear understanding of how we move forward and make allowances and adjustments for changes in operational costs and maintenance costs, those types of things. And I think that it's very important to mention that many areas in the province do not enjoy the excellent relationship that the city does with our partners of the county. I'm constantly reminded through speaking with other elected officials from across the province that we are somewhat of an exception in that we have councils from both municipalities that realize the importance of the services that are offered here in the county, who uses them, and that both sides are willing to participate and be reasonable about the costs that are incurred to offer those to all residents, and we're treated fairly regardless of where you happen to reside within Lacombe area. So I think that it was an excellent agreement here, and thanks to Chief Gowdy, Councillor Hibbs, and other senior staff for getting together, being good ambassadors for the city, and likewise all the representatives from the county of Lacombe did a wonderful job in representing their ratepayers, and they were very cooperative, and I think that that's a pretty enviable relationship to have. Councillor Golson.
I think Councillor Connick was first.
Okay, Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Councillor Gullickson and Mayor Creasy. Can you just explain to me a little bit the facility deficit adjustment?
Yes. So as you know, there are virtually no facilities that the city operates that do not have an operating deficit. And so when we look at those services, sometimes there are significant shifts in deficit. Whether, let's say that there's a significant renovation at Urena, for example, that results in a shift in the overall deficit of that facility. Then at the 5-year mark, when we go to do that deficit adjustment, adjustment for the transfer, we'd look at that, and if it's increased by 10% because of these changes, then we would go to the county and say, well, we're looking for an adjustment of 10% on the transfer for that component of the overall transfer.
So you're talking debt, or you're talking subsidization? Like I'm just trying to.
Subsidization.
Oh, okay.
So debt, I think it is important to note maybe here. The county and the city treat capital expenditures quite differently, and it's a function of the financial position of the two municipalities. So the county really looks away from debt as a funding source. where the city often makes use of debt. And then it is worked into the operating budget through debt servicing costs in future years. County prefers, since they have the ability to do so, to withdraw from their reserves and pay their component. And so every year, there's still a need for these, they call them, it's called the recreation and culture policy, grant policy or something, RC1 applications, they call them. And so the city and others apply for capital funding from the county. Then the county decides whether yay or nay or how much, and then makes that contribution. And so the one component, when you look at the deficit for a facility, the county will not consider debt servicing costs as part of that deficit. It's only labor and equipment and maintenance, that's sort of typical operating costs.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just trying to wrap my head around the formula and what that entailed. Okay.
Councillor Gullikson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So on the library, now the library is part of the contribution, about $33,000, I think, came from the county towards the library, and the city puts in about 700,000, a little more than that maybe, with in kind and so on. Is it so no longer going to be based on a percentage?
Correct, it will be frozen at the, not frozen, it'd be benchmarked at the average of the last 4 years and then indexed to inflation. So I think that is a component to consider, is on things like the LMC or the library, there's not been, I hate to use the word, but fair compensation, that continues. Similarly, the county would likely, if I was advocating for them, I would say, well, some of those pool user numbers seem to have risen dramatically in the last couple of years. And so that's also being frozen. So any inaccuracies in the current system will remain with the expectation that they will offset one another. And that was kind of the philosophy going in, is that we would be making it similar to how we have, the relationship would be similar in terms of service delivery and cost recovery, but that if we could streamline the process and make it more predictable, we would. And that's what's before it. But things like the library, they continue to pay a small ratio of the overall cost.
Yes, yeah, and that's going to continue on, but and that'll all just come from will that even show as a line item then for the library? It will not show as a county contribution now.
It will, because we'll receive it and then it will be allocated out to the various departments within our budget.
It will come from the city also.
Definitely, yes.
Through the city.
Yeah.
Yes, through the city.
Councillor Cock,
So further than that, then, so if we get the allocation, we can adjust those values. If we want to give more to the library, we can, and get less, or is that still locked in? I mean, we get the money from them, just this lump sum, how we allocate it is still,
That's to our,
however we feel.
that's to our
Okay.
business.
I think it was because of some of this methodology, streamlining and not worrying so reliance heavily on some of these accounting methods. The hope was that things would balance out with the aggregate total. Will there be some inequities for individual facilities? Absolutely. But I truly believe it's a far better system than where we were at previous. So with all of these areas that this includes, a lot of facilities and whatnot, there's a couple in there that are not included, Chief Gowdy. One recreational, right, one local athletic park, and fire services.
Yes.
Could you just touch on?
So fire services has been set to the side because we are currently developing a master services agreement. I would anticipate that it is likely at the 5-year update of this facilities operating cost sharing agreement that may get worked in. But that's still, it wasn't developed to a point yet where it could be made a component of this project. And then the Lacombe Athletic Park Association, actually the county and the city have specific existing agreements with that group. And so to form, it's not actually a relationship between the city and the county. It is actually a relationship between the city and the LAPA and county and the association. which are documented, executed agreements.
Well, I think it's just nice to have that in the public domain so people can appreciate the difference why that was not included in there. Director Duke?
Right, thank you, Mayor Christie. Just want to add that the airport is also one of those, where the airport funding is
Yes.
captured in an agreement and it's ongoing.
I missed that one. Thank you. Another item that was of interest in those meetings that has not been fully agreed upon was the methodology for receiving information from third-party organizations without necessarily touching on the overall process or expectations of either party. What kind of time frame would be a reasonable expectation to see something come before council?
I think we had said Q1. Q1 of 2021, we had committed with the county, and they're looking for something that ensures that there's simultaneous or near simultaneous receipt of information from third-party groups. Not necessarily decision-making occurring at the same time or in consultation directly with one another, but that there isn't an opportunity for sort of packaging information one way for one group and another way for another group.
I think that that's been an awful long time coming, and I think that's a very reasonable thing for us to come up with some sort of agreement, because there's a reasonable expectation that at some point in time, those types of organizations may be expecting support from both parties. So even though they may happen to reside within city limits, so I guess just a FYI that it's coming down like hopefully in the next 4 or 5 months, I guess would be a reasonable time period. Just have that on the record. Thank you. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move that council approve the City of Lacombe and Lacombe County Facilities Operational Cost Sharing Agreement.
Thank you. Anyone else? Very good. I will call the question, and all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. Chief Gotti, has that same document went for ratification to the Council of the County?
Yes, they unanimously endorsed it last week, and I have executed copies awaiting, I believe, 2 of our signatures.
Very good. I just want to mention prior to the vote, I didn't think that'd be appropriate, but I think to know that both sides have agreed on it, I think is important. Our next item before us is the committee's review phase 3. Director Duke.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Before council tonight is a request for decision, and with it is an attached committee review report number 3. This is the third in a series of comprehensive committee review reports on council committees, boards and commissions, and city participation in external agencies. The current report reviews the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board, or SDAB, the Municipal Planning Commission, or MPC, and the Council Committee of the Whole, providing options to amend the city's representation and management of all 3. Just by way of summary, the Council Committee's review report number 3 discusses the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board, which currently has 2 vacancies on it, and the city is having some difficulty recruiting new members for this. The training required for this is extensive, and the city currently receives only 1 to 2 SDB applications per year. There is, the current board membership right now is 2 members of the public and 2 councillors, 1 council and 1 alternate. And the designated secretary to the board which is a non-voting member and is currently the Legislative Services Coordinator. The SDAB also receives a small amount of money from the city in its operating budget, clerical services and meeting space. It does achieve all 5 levels of the IAP2 spectrum of public participation and engagement, from inform all the way up to empower. The committee's decisions are appealable only to the Municipal Governance Board. Presence. The administration is recommending 2 potential amendments in no order of priority. One is cease appointing a councillor to the board. It is quasi-judicial and it's a decision-making body. Sometimes council representation is causing a potential conflict of interest or an issue with pressure on the councillor, and that is deemed as not particularly amendable. There is another option as well, which is to engage with an intermunicipal SDAB with a private organization. And in this case, it would be the Parkland Community Planning Services, which offers SDAB appeal review and decision-making as one of its services that it can offer to the municipality in a service package at a set service fee. Administration is also recommending that amendment, depending on council's preference. So I'll leave it there for this particular committee if council wants to make some kind of decision on that. Again, the recommended motion is that council direct administration to prepare a report outlining the option of replacing the city's subdivision and development appeal board as constituted with a regional SDAB through Parkland Community Planning Services.
Thank you, Director Duke. Got a few hands up here. Councillor Collick.
Thank you, Mayor Chrissy. So I've had the opportunity to sit on SDB on a couple occasions, this term and on a previous term. I would say, you had mentioned you think councillors feel pressure sitting on this?
Potentially.
Because I've never felt that, because I mean, ultimately those decisions that come to SDB start in MPC. So, and there's 3 elected officials on there. So I don't know how the pressure is any different there than it would be on SDAB, to be frank. I agree with the recommendations. I think the only thing I have an issue with is I don't think it should go to Parkland Community Planning Services. I think I'd much rather prefer a regional intermunicipal SDB with Macomb County, because then I think you still have members of the large there. Would be my understanding, I'm guessing you still have members of large, you might have an elected official there. I guess I foresee maybe a conflict because we've utilized PCPS in our own planning and development department, right? With our manager off for a little bit there. So I see a bit of a conflict where they could, facilitate a recommendation and then it goes to STB and then they're going to oversee the approval of that again. Like that to me seems like a bit of I would sooner go to a different group altogether than, so that's the only conflict that I see. I agree with the recommendations, but I think it should still be something we do with Lacombe County, to be quite frank. Thank you.
Chief Cody.
So I also like the idea of going to Macomb County. They may not be interested in doing that. I believe their SDAB is constituted with no council representation. And actually not even members of Lacombe County. They go to other communities too. I hear and completely understand the concern with PCPS. I would say when they are overseeing the regional SDAB, no staff members from PCPS are directly related to the decision making. They are acting as a clerk, and so there's public members that are still making that decision making, but the optics could be there.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody's expressing that they would not be professional in their duties. It just appears odd when it's the same company name on both, and I happen to agree with that as well. Councillor Jacobson.
So yeah, so I want to clarify that. So it would not be PCPS staff actually voting for SDAB?
Correct.
SDAB?
Okay.
Well, I mean, I actually kind of got a problem with that. And I'll tell you why. I have had several experiences with SDABs in my career over the years, here and in other jurisdictions, and the absolutely mind-numbingly want to shoot myself in the head issue with these kind of boards is when you have members who apparently have gone through all kinds of training and can't even grasp the fundamental planning issue that's being presented in front of them, okay? And I mean, you're talking about, in many cases, you're talking about multi-million-dollar decisions sometimes that are coming, or even just smaller ones, right? When you've got someone asking you questions, several people asking questions, and they're clearly down a rabbit hole that's not even relevant, and then you got to leave them alone to debate over like that. It's extraordinarily discouraging. So for me, I mean, I would prefer to see NPC and SDAB simply staffed by professionals who've been trained to understand the issues, and I can live with the decision as long as I know the person understands the issue. But that being said, if it's going to be subjective about council, I'd like to see at the very least. So council is the one that makes the subjective political decision, but if it's going to be elevated, to me, it should be decided by people who are impartial, who have thorough and complete professional training to make this decision. Because then at the very least, if you get told no, you can at least tell yourself, well, at least they understood the issue and gave me a reason for that, because it is absolutely soul destroying to be told no and know that they were just on a different planet altogether.
So yeah, I don't pretend to know all the circumstances that would leave you to feeling so strongly about it. I happen to agree that it should be a professional group that does it. There's a lot of requirements that go far beyond, I think, what's reasonably expected of every municipality to provide. So having some sort of an outside group perform those duties for the city, I'm all in favor of it. How we go about it, I'm not quite so concerned with, but I think that it has a very large demand on our resources for personnel to make sure that the training and whatnot on an ongoing basis happens and that people are brought up to speed on the requirements of being on that board for, I believe you said perhaps 2 meetings a year. It's very few in any event. So that makes it a very difficult thing for me to have people trained in each community over it. I think some sort of a larger group effort, a multi-municipal would be far preferable. However that may come about. I see a hand up over here as well. We have a motion in our future. So, Councillor Jacobson, was there a preference for, I'm understanding that you would have a.
Yeah, I would definitely have a preference for a regional type board, certainly under the staffing stewardship of PCPS with no council representation is what I would definitely have a preference for.
So you put that into a motion?
Well, you think about that. We're going to give the floor to Councillor Kotick.
So just to Councillor Jacobson, so you say regional, so are you open to having, a partnership with Macomb County or Black Falls, or, if there's no council representation, which I would, sure, that's fine. Do you want members of large, or are you saying no, or would, I get your argument, but I still think it's, they may be professionals, but do they have, I don't know, I struggle, I'm trying to figure that out, I don't know.
Councillor Jacobson.
Yeah, so my preference would be to have a regional with members who do not reside in the region, period, right? Because again, my experience is that the very subjective and frankly political considerations of land use issues come up at NPC, right? And 9 times out of 10, or I don't know what the statistics are, most times people live with the decisions. But if there's, something that is elevated to SDAB, in my opinion, it would be much better to have it judged impartially by people who are not influenced by anything living here and are simply there looking at, the relevant information in front of them, because again, it leads to a process where whoever is going to lose can at very least say, well, I was treated fairly with all the relevant facts being considered. That's that kind of thing, right? I just think it's I know from experience, it would be a much better process.
So alternative motion 1.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look and see.
It's on page 3.
Yeah,
So certainly some options before you exist if there's points that you would prefer to alter or come up with one of your own.
One and three.
Certainly your prerogative.
Oh, not three, sorry.
Councillor Connick?
If I may, and so is there, did I see a financial implication if we did go with PCPS? Or did I miss that? I thought there was something that would, there'd be a fee there.
There is a fee. It's a time and materials type of contract. So there's a retainer where you pay a membership fee every year to be part of the regional SDAB, and you don't happen to know that off the top of your head, do you? I think it's 12 to 15,000.
Yeah, I thought this was memory actually.
And then there is depending on the complexity of the cases that they review and the number of cases they review, there's a time and materials component that, of course, the more effort required, the higher cost to the municipality. It is somewhat difficult to offset that with your current costs, which are related to training for SDAB members and internal staff time managing the board, that sort of thing, without knowing how many reviews or what complexity they'll review at any given year. But I think there would be a slight increased cost. I would expect, from what we've looked before, that the hearings are running between 5,000 and 15,000 per hearing, in addition to that annual retainer. But that's what we would be fully developing in the recommended report, presenting these options for you.
Go ahead.
And just one last thing, so then whatever motion that Councillor Jacobson comes up with, that would become effective immediately, then SDB would cease, that would no longer be, is that to come into effect?
You would need to pass a new bylaw
Oh, I see, you're right,
prior
sorry.
to doing so, so there is a process
Okay,
here.
gotcha, sorry.
Our recommendation is to look at both options and sort of look at the costs, explore it further with Macomb County if they're interested in doing a regional partnership, and present you back some options. But we have also in the alternative motions presented some options that would be more directive to either go with PCPS or go with Macomb County.
Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Is that something like in the past was a Red Deer Regional Planning Commission? Like years ago?
I believe that Parkland Community Planning Services is the former Red Deer Regional
That's what I mean.
Planning
Because years ago, the county and the town went that route, like, if I remember correctly, for the.
Councillor Jacobson?
I'm going to take a stab at this. Okay. I'd like to move that council approves replacing the city's subdivision development appeal board as constituted with a regional SDAB through a no bylaw, populated by board members from outside the region and an agreement with Parkland Community Planning Services, and that council ceases to appoint a councillor to the city's subdivision development appeal board.
Thank you.
That covers
Does not include anything about the report acceptance one, are we comfortable proceeding on that?
That's fine. You will still have an opportunity to review it because we'll have to bring a bylaw proposing the exact logistics. So there will be an additional step to actually approving it before it goes into effect. I would anticipate the development of that agreement will take actually probably not a lot of time because they have it with a few others, but a few months probably before it comes back to council and it's ready for adoption.
Councillor Connick?
And just further, I mean, I can't remember the last time we met. SDAB, I think it's been 2 years, maybe even
It's been a
longer.
while.
It's been a long time, so this is, well, worse than.
Are you suggesting that it would be preferable
Because you-
not to have the annual fee?
Because the folks at FPC have been doing such a wonderful job, we haven't had.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's always nice to give credit where credit's due. Councillor Gullis?
I was just gonna say that, I mean, so we would pay $15,000 a year for no meetings, for no service?
I would have to get the exact number. I still believe that it's between 12 and 15,000. We will get the number, and yes, you would pay it regardless of whether that retainer would be paid regardless of whether they see appeals or not. And that's to help them maintain the required training for the Municipal Government Act, as well as managing the actual logistics of the board.
So is there any other boards around the province that we could just say, if we have an appeal, we'll give you $10,000 and you can look at it? Instead of, I just think it's $30,000 for no meetings.
So I haven't explored that. I think that would be one of the things you could look at with Macomb County. I would expect that it would be a no, that they wouldn't go for that, because they are currently shouldering cost to have a standing SDAB ready to go, a professionally managed SDAB. It's much like the fire department from that sense. If you have no fires this year, you'll pay $1 million for a fire department that never responds. And
So to be clear, these individuals are not operating on a volunteer basis. They're paid individuals for this position.
that's correct, yes.
So I think that's the biggest difference. And I'm not sure everybody appreciated that there is some ongoing costs regardless. On the surface, you would think, how is it that we can become part of a intermunicipal or interagency co-op type thing and perhaps spend a little bit more? That seems a little counterintuitive, but we do consider this is a paid board. That's where the difference comes in ongoing costs regardless of attendance for a hearing or meeting.
I believe Director Thompson has the number, and then I'm.
Sorry, I don't have the number, but I did want to add that one of the questions that we'll have to clarify, or one of the things we'll have to clarify with PCPS in particular, is that retainer, is that kind of a minimum service fee? So if we do call on them to run an SDAB, do the costs kind of apply to our fee that we've paid for that year already? And so it may not be a fixed fee and then a cost over and above that, maybe just a minimum service fee that you have to pay. And then every time we call on them, it kind of utilizes those funds until we exceed them.
So theoretically, if there were only one, it might not exceed the minimum annual fee, but the minimum annual fee is due again the following year regardless.
Correct. Yes, correct. So we'll have to clarify that, and certainly we will if council passes this motion.
Thank you. Councilor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mark Creasy. I just had a question about membership. So Cindy Esau sat on this committee. Is her term finished, that she wasn't listed, or was she maybe?
I can respond to that, Mayor Creasy, if you like. We actually have a bylaw that specifies the need for 5 members, and currently we have 3 vacancies as of the end of December. So Cindy Esau is no longer a member because she's moved out of the municipality, out of province.
Thank you for that clarification. Anything additional before we consider the motion before us? Just so we're all clear on what we're voting on. Coordinator Pettiot, could you read that back to us, please?
Certainly, Mayor Creasy. Councillor Jacobson's motion was that council approves replacing the city's subdivision development appeal board as constituted with a regional STAB through a new bylaw populated by board members outside the region and an agreement with PCPS, that's Sparkland Community Planning Services, and that council ceases to appoint board members to the city's STAB.
Was that as you intended? Yes. Okay, very good. Anything further? Seeing no hands, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you, Councilor Hoekstra. Let the records reflect that. I look forward to the report for our consideration. Director Duke, do we also have some consideration for the Municipal Planning Commission as well?
We do, thank you, Mayor Christie. So moving on to the Municipal Planning Commission, this is also a commission that's established by bylaw 228. The services provided by the commission is development authority for discretionary areas of the land use and development bylaws of the municipality. The commission's role is to advise council concerning the achievement of orderly, economical, and beneficial development uses of land and settlement patterns for the city. Current membership is 3 elected officials and 2 members of the public. There are no vacancies, I believe, on this committee. The board is provided operational services internally by the City of Lacombe Planning and Development Department. Specifically, the Development Officer 2 is the administrative support, and the managerial liaison is the Manager of Planning and Development. The commission achieves IAP2 spectrum 4 of the 5 public engagement levels, including inform, involve, collaborate, and empower. So the MGA provides flexibility for council to delegate its powers by bylaw to this commission. And administration is currently recommending no changes to this commission. We have one alternative, which is to cease appointing a council voting member to the board and appoint the chief administrative officer or his designated instead, effective this month. However, this option is not recommended by administration.
Thanks, Director Duke. Who would like to start on this item? Councillor Kotick.
I would also move that council accept the review report of the NPC as information.
Thank you. Additional input? As we know, that pretty much is a status quo motion. That's what we're prepared to entertain, and seeing no input, I will call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous, I believe. Thank you. And the last portion, may be a little redundant given our organizational meeting, but seeing how it appears on the agenda, the Council Committee of the Whole portion, please, Director Duke.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. The Council Committee of the Whole is established by the Procedural Bylaw 370. It's a council bylaw, and of course provided for by the Municipal Government Act. It is a standing, it was at least maybe, is unlikely to be after this report, continued as a standing committee. It is all of council. Interestingly, when administration was reviewing this particular committee for council's benefit today, we surveyed a number of different municipalities in our area comparators to see how they were managing this particular aspect of municipal government. And we were finding that some municipalities had standing committees that was regularly scheduled, some did not. And there was really no uniformity, I thought, between the municipalities and how they managed them and how they scheduled them. So the administration report, we had a number of different recommendations, and we have provided ours as that council directs administration to schedule committee meetings only for specific topics, either predetermined or as directed by council, rather than as a standing item for the first Monday of every month, and include this amendment in the next update of the procedural bylaw, which will need to be amended, minor amendments.
Well, certainly in keeping with what was voted on previous at the organizational meeting, I think this council has an excellent work ethic there, ready to put in the effort and attend those meetings when the need arises, and if it's 2 or 3 in a row, so be it. But just to purposely schedule a meeting without having any business at hand seems a little ridiculous when we've already got regularly scheduled council meetings, and we have ample opportunity to advertise them well in advance of the minimum requirements of the MGA. So I certainly don't have any problem with adjusting our procedural bylaw to reflect this, but Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, so I would largely want to make the motion as written here. However, I guess I would like a discussion on if I were to read it as that council directs administration to schedule committee meetings only for specific topics, either predetermined or as directed by council, rather than a standing item on the first Monday of every month, and include this amendment in the next update of the procedural bylaw. Is that clear enough that it doesn't have to be the first Monday either? Like it was the previous practice, but going forward, that wouldn't necessarily have to be the practice, I guess is what I'm getting at. I'd like to have flexibility there that maybe it's the, I don't know, fourth Monday or whatever, just a different Monday, right? So, or maybe not even a Monday, I don't know. But anyway, that's my question on clarification as to what that specific motion is dictating. Would that be your understanding?
Yes. I would certainly take it to be as required, meaning any day.
Okay, perfect.
As agreeable by council. I don't think that it has to be even a Monday perhaps.
That's what, exactly, right?
In all likelihood it will be,
Probably will be in
given
practice, but not
everyone
necessarily.
has rather busy schedules and Mondays tend to be more available than some days, but no, I don't think it has to be limited to that.
Sure. Okay,
That's
well,
how I took it.
that is my motion because that is my intent, so.
Very good. Anyone else? Councillor Jacobson.
Yeah, just on this topic, I mean, I'm not gonna request an amended motion like that, but for me, I would even prefer, because I've often noticed sometimes, you know, our committee meetings are quite short, which is good. But I mean, if an issue isn't pressing in terms of information needs to be gotten right away, I would rather, you know, wait a month and have like several topics discussed in an evening over 2 hours than just, you know, a couple of little evenings here and there kind of thing, unless something needs to be discussed. But that's, again, my personal preference. I'm not sure how the rest of council feels about that, but.
I expect that applies to most, but perhaps I'm wrong.
So that, the nature of the existing system kind of led to that, where sometimes we would foresee, oh, there's a council meeting coming, or a committee meeting, sorry, coming up, that we maybe don't actually have set topics for. And so we would hold back some items from a different committee meeting to make sure we have something for this other meeting that's set. And that's what kind of led us to this recommendation was, if you have things ready, there's a need for it, get it all done in one and don't have this other meeting and have stuff just to fill it.
Sounds like a miracle of central planning.
Director Duke.
I just want to comment that when doing the survey of the different municipalities, there were quite a range of how they were scheduled. And more than one schedules them on the same day as a council meeting during the day before the council meeting, and kind of loads up a single day that way. Not that I would recommend it, but just like consider that there's a lot of different options for scheduling.
Councillor Hibbs has already made that motion.
Yeah.
Anyone else care to speak to it? Or do we need it repeated? Or are we good? Anybody like the motion repeated? Nope. I will call the question on all those in favor. Those opposed, that is unanimously in favor. Thank you. Thank you, Director Duke. That was 3 in a row.
3 in a row.
All right. And my document says here that for the rezoning request, land use bylaw 400.31 would be presented by Manager Bonnet, although I do not see her here, so I'm assuming that Director Thompson, will you be addressing this item?
Totally.
Floor is yours.
So the city's received an application to rezone 55, 15, 52nd Avenues, residential lot from what is currently in R1 zoning to R4 mixed residential mixed district. The applicant proposes to develop, or has indicated proposes to develop a fourplex on the property. Administration has reviewed the application. Because the application does not align with the municipal development plan, the LUV, or the central residential district in the downtown area redevelopment plan, it is administration's recommendation that council ultimately deny this application. However, it is also our understanding that the developer is working to consult and discuss the concerns of the landowners who opposed a previous application of this lot, to try to address their concerns in this current development. And so for this reason, administration is recommending that council proceed with first reading for this permit application to give the developer time to do this work and to present his findings to council directly during a public hearing. We have received some feedback from residents so far, and that's included and attached to the package. But certainly this is not an application or a rezoning of a lot that will be new to the nearby residents. So we expect there will be some feedback. So ultimately, our recommendation is to pass it.
Thank you, Director Thompson. Chief Gotti.
And to set a public hearing.
Correct.
And so unfortunately we missed that recommended motion, but we do recommend both the first hearing and the setting of a public hearing. Do you have the proposed date for when that public hearing will be?
Now, so the second meeting in November 23rd at 5:30.
Thank you.
Given that it's for the first reading for bylaw, I think that's a, council expected that to be a portion of it. So this area has been before us previously, a few accounts. Well, I give everybody a moment to digest the information for you. This is one of those ones that is going to be interesting. This council's been very proactive in supporting development in our community and trying to balance that with the expectations of citizens that are in established neighborhoods. So I'll be honest, I look forward to seeing the input on this and see what direction we choose to go. Councillor Jacobson.
Yeah, I just want to confirm with the CAO. So I noticed now that in the executive summary, it says that this does not align with the MDP. And is that, did we amend the MDP? Because I had requested about 8 months ago, I believe, to update this zone to reflect that council has consistently rejected these ones, because previously the MDP had supported these kinds of applications, which was quite confusing for developers to be told administratively, these are supported only to come to council and get rejected. So has that in fact been updated to reflect that?
It has not. The MDP supports redevelopment that is complementary to the existing development. And so when we say the MDP does not support this proposal, it's not that there's something in the MDP that says R1 lots in the central zone shall not be rezoned to R4, for example. But when we look at the intent of the MDP and what it highlights for desired redevelopment and infill development in the central zone, we do not believe that this would meet that threshold. Part of this is absolutely based on previous R1 to R1N application and council's decisions and rationale for that decision at the time. A lot of the same considerations would apply to an R1 to an R4, and some might even say that there's more possible concerns that would come up from residents from going from an R1 to an R4 than an R1 to an R1N. Is there anything else about specifically to the MDP direction of this? But no, there has not been a specific amendment to restrict infill development in the central zone.
So I mean, it's pretty obvious from your package with the letters that were received here regarding this particular application. I guess for me, the dilemma is whether or not we are interested in giving this developer an opportunity to at least have an avenue to pursue this and consult with area property owners to try and make this a reality.
I need to before now.
Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess I have a question about this. Generally, I would pass a first reading of something like this and proceed to a public hearing just out of principle, whether I agreed with it or not, just because I believe that it does give the public a chance to present its case as well as the proponent, actually, for that matter, as you mentioned. But I guess my question is, for clarification, do we get a lot of requests for rezoning like this? Like, do they always end up at, like, coming to chambers, or are some turned away before it gets to that point by administration, I'm assuming? I don't know if you're able to answer that question, but.
So we would never turn one away. The closest we would get, and we do get to this sometimes, where we would say to someone, you know, we think for the following reasons, it's gonna probably not go, it's a bad idea, and we are gonna recommend not moving ahead with it as it is today. I would say we've been quite successful in recent years, at least, in that not just being rejecting the developer and him or her walking away, but that they are able to say, okay, well, if these are the 3 reasons you're concerned about, what can we do to mitigate 2 of them? And work to get something that can come to council that we can endorse, because often most people understand that or expect that if an application comes and it has administration's stamp of disapproval, their chances of actually getting it passed are worse than if they have the endorsement. And so most people are eager to get something that they think has a good chance of being approved. So we would not turn away any applications. Everything that someone wants to bring to council does come to council.
Okay, then just a follow-up.
Sure.
So then theoretically, if I were to make that motion that we pass first reading, then we should also then follow that up with scheduling a public hearing, like right away as well, even though it's not showing here.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I would recommend that, yes.
Okay. So given that, I would move that council pass first reading of bylaw 400.31 as presented.
Thank you. Would have anything that they would like to add? Very well, all those in favor? None opposed? Very good. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make the motion that council schedule a public hearing for bylaw 400.31 at 5:30 PM on Monday, November 23rd, 2020.
And does that date fall in line with expectations from the planning department? That'd be reasonable.
Yes, so.
It allows for proper notification and everything.
Yes, it does.
Very good. Thank you for that, Councillor Gullickson. Anything additional? All those in favor? Thanks, everyone. Can thank Manager Bonnet for preparing that report. Director Thompson, thank you. Move down to the information portion of our evening. On to 6.2, council mailbox. The September 17th Parkland Regional Library Board Talk. Any discussion or concerns with that letter? The next one up, always nice to have letters of appreciation. This one with regards to the trail system here in Lacombe. Councillor Hoekstra?
Just a question on, like, so that letter, we get to see their name. Why can we not see the names of the letters that pertain to that bylaw, first reading of the bylaw?
Sorry,
Remind me about how that works.
which one did you say the name is on?
On this letter in the mailbox, when they're just thanking us for the trails.
I don't have that in front of me, but I would say that is probably just an oversight
We
The,
typically see.
The signature has been redacted, however, the name appears underneath.
Oh, no, we do have that in our policy, thank you. The signature is always redacted. The name, our public participation policy does state that the name will be disclosed. Or can be disclosed, I should say. There's a reasonable expectation that the name can be disclosed. Typically, when it is a more negative criticism, I guess, then we wouldn't include the name unless they had agreed to that ahead of time. When it is it's a positive letter, we do. So there is some discretion in the policy.
Appreciate you bringing that up though, Councillor. I think that this letter from Derry and Laurie Armstrong is certainly appreciated, and I expect there are many, many more that feel similarly, but it's certainly nice when someone chooses to put it in writing and send it in, so I expect there is a thank you and response headed their way. I'm expecting.
Absolutely.
Very good. Thanks, Director Duke.
Sorry, just.
Councillor Hibbs, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just a question, because it's somewhat related, and we don't have a report on it separately. A brief update, speaking of trails, on the west, like the stairs, the trail out on the west side.
Can do. Thank you, Councillor Hibbs. The stairs themselves were installed today. It's not yet open. We're expecting in the next couple of days that it will actually be opened. So there's some support or blocking, I believe, is what's ongoing this week.
So it potentially will be open for the winter season.
We believe absolutely it will be.
Okay, and then I guess my follow-up question to that, just because it does comment on the, our winter trail maintenance is also very appreciated. It says, or, would that be maintained over the winter, the stairs in particular? Like, I'm a little bit concerned about that now that I've read this letter, thinking about that.
Thank you. The stairs themselves are designed so that snow should fall through. However, it does pack up. I don't believe that it is actually an item that will be on our winter trail maintenance. That trail in that location is normally closed in winter, not maintained and not kept open.
Okay.
So we'll have to have a look at that and maybe can get back to you on that.
Either signed saying use at your own risk, or reconsidering maybe at least the stairs may be maintained, but anyway.
Very good point. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I thought of it when I was reading the letter, so, thank you.
Thank you. Item 6.2D. I'm sorry, I've passed over on the rezoning comments letter from October 14th. Any comments on that letter?
Just being nitpicking tonight, it was included in the mailbox because it's addressed to the council rather than the planning department. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct.
Because we see it twice in our package, okay?
Yeah, in order to avoid any complications down the road, it's just easier to put in there because of the way it was addressed.
Okay.
And then we have the letter from October 16th from the Lacombe Police Commission regarding budget. Councillor Connick, any comments on that letter?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Great. And a few days later, October 21st, we have a letter from the regarding curling club audio. Councillor Ross?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I saw your hand up. Anyone care to speak on that? Councillor Connick?
I'm just curious, like, so it talks about, they have, they've done, sorry, they do have some numbers, oh, sorry, yeah. I have attached this quote. So I guess I'm wondering, like, will we see this further then? Because we don't have the whole, we don't have the quote, we don't know how much they're asking for.
We can include it. It's $22,000 that they've requested for the correct, Rick? Total value is $22,000.
At this time, CAO County, at this time, we did recommend that they get a sound study to make sure that it is actually the electronic equipment that's causing the problem and not some other, like, for example, reverberation or something like that nature.
Assessment, I would call it, a sound assessment.
Yeah.
And so then after that, then perhaps we'll see something,
Yes,
probably a formal request, I'm guessing.
yes,
Thank you.
with some cost associated.
Okay, thank you.
That was my question also.
Very good. The Lacombe Regional Waste Services Commission minutes were put forward from August 26th. Any questions with those? Councillor Kotick?
I just have one in terms of the manager's report, in terms of mattress recycling, partnership with Dow. What, can you fill me in, anything, I mean, what's the plan? Are you gonna reuse part of the mattress, all of it, do you know, or? Just seems pretty cool idea.
Yeah, as you can well imagine, mattresses are particularly problematic at a site where there's machinery on it, and they use a tracked cat to push up the various cells, and they become entangled in the mechanism of the tracks and whatnot. It's a bit of a nightmare. So working with members of the county and Dow Chemical have come up with a plan that they have endorsed to recycle those items. There's an operation in Calgary that does that. So the site at Prentice will act as a receiving depot. There's a small covered area, shed, building extension, whatever you want to call it, being undertaken that will house these items so that they can be fully recycled and keep them out of the landfill altogether.
Because I threw one on my front lawn this year for fall cleanup. It's great that they're recycling the things.
So needless to say, it's nice to have corporate partners who are interested in that kind of thing, who can offset the cost of the undertaking, because they're not collecting them is kind of the easy part. It's the cost involved with transporting them and processing them for recycling that becomes kind of an expensive undertaking. Anything you'd like to add, Councillor Hibbs?
No.
You were there for those meetings too, so. Very good. Anyone else? On to the September 17th Lacombe Police Commission minutes. Any questions for Councillor Kotick? Very good. Moving to council reports. My name appears there first. I do not have a written report, but just to bring you up to date, a few items. I already spoke of the one opening, the man group, which is great to see for our community, filling a need in our community. Great to have them on board. Another one was the recent announcement regarding Biorefinex for the Lacombe biorefinery. In there, pleasure to host Minister Nixon here, along with MLA Orr and Councillors Gullickson and Hibbs, Reed Law, and certainly a lot of representatives from Biorefinex company itself, Chris Thrall, and some of the senior management team that was there, and the originator of the technology that will be implemented in this facility, Dr. Eric Schmidt. So at the same time, I don't think that we necessarily knew that going in, but at the same time, that announcement of $10 million in funding from Minister Nixon announced as a part of the TIER program from the Alberta government. There was also an announcement of an additional $10 million provision of funds from Enbridge, thank you. The company wrong. So a substantial amount of money, considering that represents
nearly half of the expected cost of the facility, so we will look forward next year to see what becomes of their plan, and we'll take it from there. The ball is kind of in their court now, so. Like I said, it was a pleasure to host everybody here at the LMC and put that out. I had lots of phone calls from the subsequent positive exposure. Friends and colleagues in Edmonton and Calgary and whatnot all saw it on, I believe it was on Global TV and others, but certainly positive news for the Coleman area. And the other item concluded my participation in Lacombe Has Talent yesterday, which was a very enjoyable experience. Just to give up a half a day or whatever the last, I guess over the previous month on 3 of the Sundays, and it's quite refreshing to see that the arts are alive and well in Lacombe, and we're represented from, I believe, some youngsters that were, I believe, 9 years old, up to one gentleman who I believe was in his 90s, and it was lots of interesting talent all the way around, and hopefully we made decisions that reflect the community's intent, but it was lots of fun, and I think we'll be out on video, I believe today or first thing.
Yeah, it's today.
Is it tonight? Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet, but I believe it's today.
They had to do the little post-production work and whatnot to edit everything together, but great bunch to work with, fellow judges, and Darcy Stingle looked after the emceeing, so he always brings certainly a professional air to things, and we had a lot of fun doing it. So a positive benefit for the community, and quite honestly, I can't wait till the next one. Hopefully I'm invited back. That's kind of all that I had for my verbal one. There's lots of other meetings and whatnot happening, but that was some of the more exciting ones for the community as a whole. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I had a few things to announce that where it was at. BioRefineMix was one of them. Also was at Goats for Kids at the high school. That was kind of fun to see the naming of the goats and watch the kids get dragged around the schoolyard by the goats. They're a little bigger now than they were when they first, I guess, announced that they were going to have these little kids. Interesting program. I'm anticipating a goat running past here one of these days. I'm sure it'll happen. Anyway, it should be something that is innovative and hopefully well received by our community and our children. Black Lives Matter protest, Councillor Hibbs and I went to that on October 3rd. I found it very interesting with some of the speeches. Were very moving and made you think about the issue of racism in our community. I'd like to say our police department did an excellent job of keeping the groups apart because there was some anti-protesters there, and I thought they did a great job of maintaining the peace. That could have got out of hand. 6 or 7 guys wanted to cause trouble, and they were there to keep that from happening. The one thing I didn't like about it is that the messaging was very good until they got in a position where they started to talk about, down with capitalism, the economy is the problem, all of those issues. It kind of diluted their message, which I thought was quite strong at some points.
Thank you. Councillor Ross.
Have a report, thank you.
Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I have my report there, but just before I go into it, 2 things to the mayor. Thank you for asking the question for BioRefineX, because I don't know why I'm watching all this online, but I am. It's good to have people to publicly say a date. Like you just said, when can we expect this to be built, right? And then they had to respond because sometimes it happens. So I liked your question, it was very pointed. So kudos to you and for being a judge at Lacombe's Got Talent. But anyhow, in front of you, you see there, board meeting, I was part of a business speaker series. I watched Lacombe's Got Talent, and I really want to commend Lacombe Performing Arts. they did a great job considering the limitations that they had to face. And the videography and everything was very good, and the diversity was amazing. Tomorrow night, no, Wednesday night, I have the Lacombe Regional Emergency Management Partnership Advisory Committee, and this is always kind of a little bit complicated to get it up and running again. I will finally be relieved of my chair position that I've held for 3 years. It's only supposed to be 1 year, but anyhow, it's all good. I shouldn't say finally. It was good, but it will be handed over to Clive. That's my report.
Appreciate that, Councillor Oakeshott. So in the interest of clarity, for those of you that did not watch the video, I did choose to pose a question that I thought would be of interest to the community as a whole, and publicly asked representatives from BioRefinex when Lacombe could expect this project to be completed. And the answer that I was given was 2022, with an expectation of starting relatively early in 2021. And that was not necessarily to put them on the spot, but it's an awkward thing when you're doing a big important announcement like that, and the public is really not allowed in the room for obvious reasons with physical distancing. So really that only left elected officials and company representatives. I was under the impression that there was going to be online questioning via some of the provincial staff that was there. Obviously that did not occur, so I thought it was important to at least have a question. So it wasn't really to put them on the spot, but given that there's been a rather lengthy relationship with this organization, I felt it was a fair question. And that was the answer that was received, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Jacobson, you're next.
I don't have my written report, which I'll submit later, but I just wanted to bring to you guys' attention one item. So at our last ECHO meeting, the ECHO board voted, after a lengthy debate, which I found amusing, to request a desisting of operational support from funding from the city of Lacombe. They were worried that the city would not be happy about them being financially independent to the tune of an extra $6,000. But I told them, I said, I'm fairly certain that will be very well received. But I wanted to bring it up because I really think it's a really phenomenal success story, because I can think of like 4 organizations since I've been a councillor that have either started up or come and they've proposed, well, we're going to start with government assistance, or we're going to grow and we're going to become independent, and there's these great visions always, and you know, it never really pans out, you know. And this little group has kind of grown into something that, I mean, is it going to make a gigantic dent in anybody's tax pocketbook yet? Not really, but I mean, it has literally grown to being independent. And I think even if it's $6,000, I think that's worth mentioning. So they're an eclectic group, and I really enjoy being on that board. And I think what they've collectively accomplished, especially under the really almost obsessive stewardship of manager LaPointe, is really something worthwhile. So that's a little tiny bit of good news.
Appreciate that. Nice of you to mention. I think that the wheels were set in motion for that quite some time ago. Councillor Connick, I run the council then, and I think that over the years they've done some good things, and it'll continue to grow. And I think that we owe it to our community to keep on pushing. I try and mention it to everyone that I can to at least consider. And I actually had some phone calls, 2 just by coincidence, last Friday on that very subject of what people wanting to know how to book on to the Eco Energy program. And it's just as simple as phoning City Hall. You don't need to worry about who to ask for. All the staff is perfectly knowledgeable and will direct you appropriately. So thank you very much for mentioning that. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you. I don't have a report this time, but I do want to talk actually about Lacomb's Got Talent. So I did watch the initial offering with like the first run, I guess, with all the contestants. I thought it was amazing, the diversity that, you know, we have in this community, people willing to step up and, you know, entertain everybody. Yeah, like you had, you know, a 90-plus-year-old rapper, you had a little tap dancing beauties, like, and just everything in between. And I can only think that this will get better again if they were to do it. And it was outstanding to have various community members be judges. And I thought it was really interesting, the diversity that you guys all brought. Clearly all love the arts, but definitely have diverse backgrounds. And I think that was really cool as well. And I can't wait to see the final edition now, because obviously I believe it was released today. So yeah, I love that. And you know, huge kudos to the Lacombe Performing Arts for, I guess, spearheading that, right? And that's something that I think is well received in our community. I hope that people haven't missed it because it wasn't like a public event, because it was on, you know, online, but they can still watch it, I think, even if it has kind of already passed. So I hope people do and just really appreciate that in our community. So I think that's amazing. And then regards to the funding announcement or whatever for BioRefinex, it was unfortunate, I think, that there was a concurrent announcement happening in Airdrie that at the same time that the premier was actually at. And so I think that took a little bit away from maybe some of the online questions or things that would have been there, because I think they would have probably been at the Jason Kenney announcement, something in Airdrie. I'm not sure what it was, I can't remember, but anyways, it is a little bit exciting in our community to have something like that to draw attention to our community. I think it does hopefully make us look like we're an innovative community, which I like to believe we are, but that sort of backs that, you know, that up, and kind of we have that sort of green, narrative, I guess, generally speaking. And so I think, again, that kind of goes back to that. I know.
It can be green.
But anyways, that's all. I just wanted to make those two comments. Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning that, Councillor Hibbert, that, well, it's reasonable that the premier would draw away some of the limelight for the decision or the announcement here. I think we also need to recognize that Mayor Brown and his councillors there have spent many years pursuing that interchange.
That's what it was.
For the community there, which is going to be an extremely expensive undertaking. So I think that that's reasonable. We wish them the best, and I'm certainly glad that they were able to get some commitment provincially to make that happen as well. But yeah, that's just the way that it worked out. It was on the same,
it's just timing.
The same time, but yeah. Councillor Connick.
No report at this time, just further the comments about BioRefinex. It is exciting to see. I know they've got, way back when they had federal money already, so there's federal money, provincial money. I'll still eagerly wait to see shovel on the ground before I jump up and down too high, but hopefully we're finally there. That's exciting.
Very good. Well, I have completely lost my agenda.
Yes, there is no CAO report. Unfortunately, I was not in the office last week, as you're aware. The positive side, the COVID watch in Lacombe was very short-lived and has since been repealed as we are below the threshold for a watch status. That's all I report at this time.
And positive news, thankfully that yourself and another staff member both had negative results. Yes, appreciate you doing the responsible thing and working diligently from home during that period. Thank you. Thank you. What else do we have on the agenda? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to help you out. I'll make a motion to receive the information as information.
Wonderful. Can I assume then that is the final item under
yes,
information reports? Very good.
Yes, and then it's the minutes, just so you know.
Wonderful. No additional questions with reports, whatnot? With respect to Councillor Hoekstra's motion, all those in favor? Unanimously approved, thank you. And then we have the minutes to review from, what was the date?
Pardon me,
October 13th.
October 13th minutes before us. Councillor Ross.
Just to point out, as Ross Padavona pointed out to me earlier, that I was present during this council meeting, so just make the motion that receive the council minutes as information with my amendment that my regret to be corrected.
Appreciate that. That will be updated accordingly.
Unless you didn't want me there.
Very good. So did anybody have any revisions to the minutes the way that they were presented? Did you so move then with that change? Okay, very good. All those in favor? Thank you. And notices of motion. Councillor Gullikson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make the motion that administration prepare a land use bylaw amendment by adding detached dwelling as a permitted or discretionary use to the R3 zoning.
Thank you. I think we've had some.
I'll speak to it if you would. Okay, R3, if you're not familiar, is mobile homes. And I believe we have how many lots, T.O. Gowdy, do you know exactly? 25 maybe?
I was gonna say a couple of dozen.
Yeah, there's about 25 lots that are designated for mobile homes only. And there's currently a new one going in, and I talked to the owner, and he would have built a house if he could have, but he couldn't. So this is the second time that's happened, and in the recent years. And so my amendment to the zoning here, by allowing a detached dwelling as permitted use, is it gives them the option.
This is in Hearthstone.
This is in Hearthstone. And the lots, some of them are beautiful lots. They back onto the schoolyard and well treed and so on. And if they want to build a house, they would be allowed to do that under this amendment. And they wouldn't have to. They would still be allowed to have a mobile home if they preferred. So we're not changing the zoning of the property. We're just adding this as a discretionary use.
Thank you, Councillor Gullikson. Chief Gowdy.
One thing that I would just add, the reason Councillor Gullikson and I talked about this ahead of time. The reason that we've put in there as a discretionary or permitted use is that should council wish to move in this direction, we want to just make sure that we don't create a situation where an unintended situation where some of the mobile home parks, which are also zoned R3, are shifted to some other housing form that we didn't intend. So that's why the wording is in there, just to make sure that we're able to draft it in a way that really restricts it to those R3 lots that are, for all intents and purposes, residential lots.
So when I think back to when these particular lots were developed, it was for a perfectly good reason. And I don't think that it was ever envisioned that this was meant to restrict them from those lots from ever being developed with house. So I look forward to this coming to be. Thank you. Councillor Jacobson, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question for the CEO or perhaps manager or Director Thompson. Is there anything from an engineering perspective servicing those lots from the city's liability side that would be affected?
No, they're used to Hearthstone specifically. I think in 2011 we had been experiencing some problems with the services there, where actually there was like some metal T inserts that were cutting plastic pipe, and so we went in and redid all the services that were affected to these lots. So they're serviced to the same municipal standard as everywhere else. The one thing that maybe is different in Hearthstone, I would say that it is unusual in our community to have roads that are that narrow with parking on both sides and no sidewalk. That's if you were to look at like servicing compromises that exist, that would be the actual carriageway of the road.
Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Does this motion have to be specific to Hearthstone? Like this won't affect Mackenzie Ranch?
So the motion, as Councillor Gosselin has presented it, is to prepare a bylaw amendment. So we would be coming back once the council gives us this direction. We'll do a bit of an assessment, make sure that we're not creating strange situations. And so it may have to be specific to particular areas. It may end up being an overlay that permits this in these specific areas.
Okay.
But we would bring that back through the bylaw amendment.
Good. Was there any additional comments or questions for Councillor Gullickson's motion? If not, I will call the question. All those in favor? Very good, thank you. I think the only portion we have left to do is in camera. We'd have to entertain a, just gonna double check the time, see where we're at. Councillor Hoekstra?
I move that we go in camera.
Very good, at 6:54.
This will help me if it takes 2 hours.